At 9:30 in the morning on August 1st, 2012, the New York Stock Exchange opened. Inside Knight Capital, 8 production servers began processing a new type of retail order. 7 ran the software that engineers expected. 1 did not. On that 8th machine, a flag inside the incoming message reached code that was supposed to be dead. The server began sending orders, then more orders. In approximately 45 minutes, Knight's router produced more than 4 million executions in 154 stocks and traded more than 397 million shares. The firm accumulated billions of dollars in positions it had never intended to own. When those positions were unwound, Knight first reported a pre-tax loss of approximately $440 million. Later, regulatory documents placed the trading loss above $460 million. This was not one algorithm suddenly becoming intelligent or malicious. It was a system that could no longer tell which version of itself was running, how much it had already traded, or when its own output had become dangerous. The failure began before the opening bell, with one server that never received an update. Knight Capital was one of the largest market makers in American equities. It connected brokers and customers to exchanges, buying and selling rapidly so that other people could trade without waiting for a matching order to appear. A system called SMARS handled part of that work. SMARS was an automated, high-speed router. It received a customer request, known as a parent order, and divided that request into smaller child orders sent to trading venues. If a parent wanted 1,000 shares, the router might send several children, watch the executions return, and stop when the total reached 1,000. That last instruction is essential. A fast router is useful only if its view of completed work remains connected to the orders it creates. For August 1st, Knight had added code for the New York Stock Exchange's new retail liquidity program. The change was narrow. It reused a flag in the order message and was intended to replace an unused function in the same part of SMARS. But the rollout did not create one new system. It created 2 different systems behind the same doorway. Beginning on July 27th, Knight installed the new code in stages across 8 SMARS servers. The work was manual. During the deployment, one technician did not copy the new version to one machine. No second technician was required to verify that every server matched. Knight had no written SMARS procedure demanding that review, and no automated deployment control stopped the cluster from entering production with 2 different code states. 7 servers now understood the repurposed flag as an instruction for the new retail liquidity path. The 8th still understood the same flag according to older software. This is configuration drift in its most dangerous form. The machines look like one service from the outside, but the same input can produce different behavior depending on which server receives it. Redundancy then becomes ambiguity. More servers do not make the system safer if one of them implements a different rule. A health check might confirm that all 8 machines were online. It would not prove that all 8 machines meant the same thing when they read the next order. The old path was called PowerPeg. Knight had stopped using it in 2003, but the code remained present and callable. When it had been active, PowerPeg relied on a cumulative quantity function to count completed shares and stop creating child orders after the parent was filled. In 2005, that counting function was moved earlier in the SMARS sequence. Knight did not retest the obsolete PowerPeg path after the change. Years later, the new retail program reused the flag that had once activated it. On the 7 updated servers, the flag entered the new code. On the 8th, it awakened PowerPeg without the stop condition it had depended on. Part of Knight's order system could recognize that a parent was complete, but that fact was not communicated to this defective path, so the server kept sending children in rapid sequence, even after the requested quantity had already executed. The immediate bug was not simply an endless loop. It was a broken boundary between intention, execution, and accounting. The router could act faster than the system could tell it that the job was finished. The system spoke before the market opened. Beginning at about 8:01 Eastern Time, an internal Knight process generated automated emails that referenced SMARS and the phrase PowerPeg disabled. 97 messages went to a group of personnel before 9:30. The Securities and Exchange Commission later emphasized an important distinction. Knight had not designed these emails as formal system alerts, and employees generally did not review them when they arrived. They were not a red alarm that everyone consciously dismissed, but they were produced in real time by the deployment failure, and they offered a potential chance to investigate the inconsistent server before live trading began. This is another kind of control gap. A system can generate evidence without creating awareness. Logs, rejects, and notifications only protect an operation if someone knows which patterns demand attention, where they appear, and who owns the decision to stop. At 9:29, all 8 servers were available. 7 were correct. 1 contained a dormant failure path, and 97 clues had not been converted into an operating picture. At the opening auction, orders carrying the reused flag began entering SMARS. 7 servers processed them correctly. The 8th interpreted them through defective power peg code. From only 212 incoming parent orders, the router produced millions of child orders and more than 4 million executions. It traded more than 397 million shares in about 45 minutes. Knight became approximately $3.5 billion net long in 80 stocks and approximately $3.15 billion net short in 74 others. Its activity did not merely damage its own balance sheet. In dozens of affected stocks, Knight represented a large fraction of trading volume and contributed to price moves greater than 5 or 10%. The automation was doing exactly what high-speed infrastructure is designed to do, turning instructions into market actions with very little delay. What was missing was a proportional break. Nothing at the router compared the tiny number of parent orders entering with the enormous number of child orders leaving, and concluded that the relationship had become impossible. Knight did have risk tools. The problem was where they sat and what they could do. Executions that could not be matched to the remaining quantity of a parent order accumulated in an internal location called the 33 account. That account had a gross position limit of $2 million, but the limit was not linked to an automated control capable of blocking more orders. Knight's primary risk display, PMON, showed positions after execution and relied entirely on human monitoring. It did not automatically alert when the firm's exposure crossed a preset threshold. It did not display the limits beside the positions. During high-volume events, it could lag and show inaccurate information. Senior personnel could see a large position accumulating, yet the observation remained separated from the machinery creating it. There was also no firm-wide automated capital threshold tied directly to market access. In control terms, Knight had instruments without an interlock. The dashboard could describe the consequences after trades returned from the market. It could not reach upstream and close the valve. The next 45 minutes, Knight's technology team tried to identify the source inside a live trading environment. The company did not have supervisory procedures guiding personnel through an incident of this scale. There was no defined response that immediately isolated SMARS, no router-wide automatic kill switch triggered by abnormal output, and no reliable capital threshold that forced the system closed. Then one attempted repair widened the failure. Engineers removed the new retail liquidity code from the 7 servers where it had been installed correctly. That rollback did not restore a known safe version. It exposed the old power peg path on those machines as well. Additional incoming parent orders could now activate the same defective behavior that had begun on the 8th server. The response changed a 1-server divergence into a broader common state. Eventually, the erroneous order flow stopped. But by then, the firm held enormous positions whose value moved while it tried to exit them. The event was not 45 minutes of one bug running untouched. It was a race between automated market action and an organization diagnosing itself without a tested way to contain the fault first. The next day, Knight disclosed an approximately $440 million realized pre-tax loss. Later accounts placed the trading loss and related impact above $460 million. The company required a $400 million capital infusion days later. A filing said the resulting liquidity crisis threatened its ability to continue operating if it was not addressed immediately. By December, Knight had agreed to merge with competitor Getco. In 2013, The SEC imposed a $12 million penalty in its first enforcement action under the market access rule. The remedies followed the chain: formal change management review, automated shutdown controls, kill switches, operational risk governance, and a dedicated emergency response center. None of those measures depends on predicting every future bug. They make inconsistency visible, connect exposure to action, and contain a process before diagnosis is complete. The deepest failure at night was not that old code existed. It was that version, output, risk, and response were allowed to remain separate truths. One server missed an update. A flag woke a path that should have been unreachable. Monitoring watched after the fact. The attempted rollback multiplied the condition. In 45 minutes, a routine deployment became a company-threatening event. One fault, every consequence. This is fault Cascade.